Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, oh my goodness, I can't even think of a better word than magnificent Oregon right now. It is absolutely stunning, perfect, glorious, wonderful. Really, truly, these are my favorite days of the year. These early fall, late summer, we get this period of time where it's cool in the morning, crisp, and yet then in the afternoon, it's dry. It's about 70 degrees. The leaves are starting to turn. It is absolutely magnificent in Oregon right now. Come see it if you haven't already. Hey, how are you doing? It is Monday, September 23rd. I have a very important episode today because it's timely and it's time sensitive. We are talking with Maggie Klaassens from the Sober Summit, and the Sober Summit is kicking off. It is happening this week on Wednesday, September 25th through Friday, September 27th. And this is whether or not you are sober curious or you are trying to minimize alcohol, which is what we're doing around here, the same ideas and thought work that apply to many of the people that are living a sober life apply to the way that I include alcohol in my life now. And this is a free resource, so you got to sign up for it though. And I wanted to have Maggie on to talk about how our communities and how our thoughts align and everything that she's doing over at the Sober Summit. You are really going to love this conversation. I hope it gets you ready for a more sober October, which is the 30-day challenge or, thing that we're going to be doing with me and my group. I'm going to have more information on that for you next week, or come to my Facebook group, The Alcohol Minimalists, and you can learn more about it there. We are here to help you learn how to include alcohol in your life in a minimal way, or drink less, or become completely alcohol free if that's your goal. I know you're going to get so much out of this conversation with Maggie, and I hope you will go check out www.thesobersummit.com. Here's my conversation with Maggie Klaassens. Hey, Maggie, thank you so much for being here on the Alcohol Minimalist. This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to talk about the Sober Summit and tell all of my listeners about what you are doing over there. So thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I love it. I love what you're doing in this space. So thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Well, and it's really important that I say this right at the top, because people often talk to me, and, one of the reasons that people listen to me or come to me is because they are turned off by the sober communities. They feel left out of, or they don't feel heard or seen in the sober communities because they aren't quite ready to make a commitment to being completely alcohol free. They might be sober curious, but they're just not ready yet. And sometimes they get told, like, well, it's either you either are or you're not. You can or you can't. And if you can't, then you have a problem. And that is not a message that resonates with them. So I wanted to include this and share this, what you're doing, because I feel like it's really important that we start to bridge that gap, and also that people hear, I say it to them when they talk to me, like, the same work that I did to become an alcohol minimalist is the same type of thought work and the things that go into becoming completely alcohol free. It's really not that different. You take, for me at least, that's the way I look at it. And so I really just wanted to share what you're doing and share this event because it's important. And the resources there are applicable for people that are trying to minimize, reduce, cut back, or eliminate alcohol from their lives.
Yes, it is. And I very much so because it's really funny to hear you say that because I never really thought about it before. But I think people oftentimes don't realize it's such a journey in the sense that, you can't compare where you're at to where somebody else is at. And it may take you a lot longer to get to where you want to be. And that doesn't mean that you're not in the right place. As long as you're doing what feels best for you. And that's the idea of getting sober curious is about that, just getting curious of what feels good to you, what feels right to you, and whether alcohol is benefiting you anymore or not. And that's really where this all kind of came about of like we have so many resources available now to help us get to where we want to go. And I wanted to be able to share those resources with people no matter where they're at in their journey. And so that's how the Sober Summit really came about was me going through my own journey and then wanting to share it with others.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of where you were with alcohol in your life and the decisions that you made around it, and then how that morphed into the Sober Summit and the Sober Collective.
So I really fell hard into mommy wine culture. And for me, it was, it really ramped up when the pandemic hit. I was a very much a habitual drinker beforehand. But I really loved, I really loved wine. It felt like a really good friend of mine. It felt like a hobby of mine. It felt like a piece of me. I felt very sophisticated because I was drinking wine. I very much felt safe because I was a wine drinker versus a beer or a spirit drinker, right? I felt very much like, well, I could never have a problem because I'm drinking something that people are telling me is good for our heart. It's got
Yeah.
antioxidants and, never did I ever think that it would be something that would be problematic in my life. But when the pandemic hit and I found myself without a job overnight and staying at home with three kids, my youngest was 9 months old at the time. My whole world changed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we were given permission to drink more. We were given permission to, the liquor stores stayed open. Restaurants, you were allowed to take booze with you with carry out. It was very much this message that it's a necessity and it's going to help us get through this. And for me, I used it very much as an excuse. I used it
Yeah.
very much of going, okay, well, this means I can now, it's okay to get wine now delivered to my house. It's okay to start a little bit earlier. I don't have a job. And, this is what everybody else is doing. So I
Right.
just kind of jumped on that bandwagon.
I think the pandemic 100% normalized over drinking for everybody. I mean, it was like, let's just, everybody can jump in. And, if you weren't even, and for people who weren't necessarily overusing before or even habitually drinking before, many people developed a habit that they didn't have. And we were 100% using it as a coping strategy to get through what was very much a very scary, um, threatening, just like you said, lost a job right away. Like there was a lot of upheaval, and it's normal for humans to seek coping things during those kinds of times. But 100%, and the way that the stores and the restaurants tried to survive those times by making it easier to get alcohol certainly increased that for people too.
Yeah, and I feel like with the pandemic as well, it wasn't just me secretly using it as a coping mechanism. It
Right.
was marketed as a coping mechanism.
Right. Like everybody's doing it. So here we
Everyone's
are.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if you still had a job, it was like, oh, we'll get on the Zoom call and it's happy hour now and everyone make
Right.
sure you have a drink. So yeah, it very much was that way for me. And, it was a good year into the pandemic, maybe a year and a half into it, where I just felt very stuck. And I didn't know if it was the pandemic. I didn't know if it's because I didn't have a job, but alcohol sure wasn't helping at all. And I kind of started getting this little tap on the shoulder saying, you know, maybe you should look at your relationship with alcohol. I became very territorial over my wine. I became I became a wine snob. Let's just be honest. I became a big wine snob, right? And I was, buying I was spending more and more on the bottles of wine I was drinking. I wanted to, get the very sophisticated stuff. $30 bottle of wine was my minimum towards the end of it, which is not a cheap habit to have. And I was, watching my husband, pour his glass, and I'm going, oh, he's going to finish the bottle, or, oh, I think he just had more than I did. Do we got more? Or if we were running low and it wasn't the wine I want, rushing out to the liquor store to make sure that I had my wine for that evening. And it just over time got really, pathetic in my own eyes of going, well, wait a second, this just doesn't seem like a healthy relationship with alcohol. But again, it's not something that taps you on the shoulder one day and you go, okay, I'm going to change that the next. It is a
Yeah.
slow, slow process, right? So I can look back and see years and years of it kind of creeping up saying, okay, maybe this isn't normal. I can remember a time, I was at my in-laws for Thanksgiving and I ran out of wine and I left Thanksgiving dinner to go grab some. Like, who does
Mhm.
that? If
Yeah.
I look back and
Oh,
think about,
I think a lot of us do.
but you
I
just
think,
how much you're handcuffed to it. You can look back and think of all these ways that alcohol took control of you and you didn't even realize it.
yeah. And I think that for me, I say all the time, it was decades really for me of a daily drinking habit and a habit that, yes, absolutely. Like in those stressful situations, I drank more. In festive situations, I drank more. In, and then I had the background of having, an a parent with alcohol use disorder. So I had this nonstop chatter in my head about the the path and a lot of anxiety about becoming her. And that was not anything that I wanted yet. I would also sort of like you, like I would reassure myself, well, I just drink beer and wine. I don't drink hard alcohol like she did. So therefore I don't have a problem, right? And I didn't and I was very I didn't like to become altered, so I was very like I was much more tended to be much more of a daily drinker and would stop because I didn't like that feeling. It reminded me of my alcoholic parent. I didn't enjoy it. But what I never put a lot of weight on for years and years was that constant anxiety that I had, that little voice, that little tap on the shoulder, the thing that was talking to me all the time. Because on the outside, nobody would have thought that because I was a successful, career person. I had a family, I had, a good circle of friends, relatively healthy. Like from the outside, there was no obvious signs that I was having that even that I worried about my alcohol use as much as I did.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. I think we're on the same
Yeah,
sort of path, right? I was a habitual wine drinker. I never binge drank, right? I never let
right,
myself get to that point. Tipsy, yes. Hungover in the morning, sure, but never, off the rails. I had three kids to take care of, and most
right.
nights I was up with them, so it wasn't really an option. But it's interesting that you say that because, yes, from the outside, I think if I were to say to anybody, I was concerned or I don't think I should drink anymore, I think people would say, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's what it would be. Well, you don't you're not going over the limit. You're not but I was. I mean, right, if you really think about
Yeah.
where our limits are at, it's supposed to be one drink a day for women, and I
Oh,
was
I know.
definitely drinking more than that. But I think, yeah, we based off of how we've normalized alcohol, if I'm comparing myself to everybody else, yeah, I was perfectly fine. And no one, everyone would have thought you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the what I do around here too is really educate people on low risk limits and about those numbers because I in my mind would have said I was a moderate drinker when in fact I was, by definition, a heavy drinker. I would have said I never binged, though by definition, if I look at the alcohol by volume and the number of drinks in a setting, I did binge. And so it's like all of these things that I had in my head about what was really happening, what I who I was actually weren't even true. And when I started to dig into that and dig into the science and kind of to your point about like all the headlines and all these beliefs that I had, well, it's not that bad because it's got antioxidants and there's things that they say all this. When I dove into all of those stories as well, I learned that that's not even true either. So once I kind of started to see the realities of what I was doing and the amount that I was drinking and was willing to understand how much the anxiety was taking away from my life, that's when I realized like this is the habit that needs to change. Beyond any other habits that I have, this is the one that I have to address. And when I did that, that's when things, my life changed. So, and I'm sure that's the way you feel too. So let's tell that part of the story too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like you, again, you don't really know how much you drink until until you really
Yeah.
learn
Until you learn.
about it.
Yeah. Right.
And so I started reading the Quit Lit books and I started learning about what alcohol was, what it was doing in my body, what happens. If people knew what your liver went through when you
Mhm.
put alcohol in your body, they'd stop and go, "Oh, I don't really know that I want to do that." Right? But you don't know. You don't know any of that. And so when you start getting curious, and that's what I love about the term sober curious, is just start getting curious. Just start learning. Just start pausing and thinking about how it makes you feel. And that's really what I did. I would start taking note of when I was drinking, how did I feel? The next morning, how did I feel? And I just started paying attention. And again, this wasn't something that happened overnight. I'm talking years of me kind of doing this and trying. So, I definitely gave up alcohol a couple of times and thought, "Oh, that's it." And sure enough, you get complacent. If you're not doing the work, if you're not continuing to read the books or listening to the podcasts or being involved in the community, you can very much get complacent and think, "Oh, I'm fine. I'll just become a moderate drinker now." And that's absolutely what I thought was going to happen. I'll just drink this one glass of wine and I'll be done. And sure, I did that day. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I'm back to drinking every night again. And I'm back where I was because your brain doesn't forget where you left off. And then you kind of go through, well, I'm going to make up for lost time kind of attitude, right? And so it was very much a process of me trying and trying again and trying again. But eventually I decided to give myself enough time. So I put into place, I wanted to do a 100-day challenge. I did it myself. I learned from other podcasts that this 100 days was really kind of the magic, the sweet spot. It really gave you enough distance from drinking that maybe a sober October or a dry January doesn't give you, in the sense that those challenges are a great kickstart, but oftentimes people are, willpowering their way through it. They're white knuckling it. They're counting down the days until they can drink again versus starting to count up the days. And so with that 100-day challenge, I really got to the point where I had gained some momentum, where I was now counting up the days, and I didn't want to. I'm a type A. So I didn't want to get rid of all my gold stars I'd given myself on my calendar and get, and start over. And so I really started building up the momentum with that, but also within that 100-day period, really started feeling that freedom from it. After I'd allowed myself to, the first 2 weeks were very, very difficult. But as time went on and I was doing the work and I was staying involved in the communities and listening to the podcast, you know, so much of the messaging I was hearing is sobriety is amazing. Sobriety is fun. It's anything but boring. It's that true freedom. It's really living. It's truly being present, truly living. And eventually you get to the point where you go through a day and I didn't think about wine. How is that possible? Or you look back and you go, gosh, it's been all week. I never thought about wine at 5 o'clock, when the witching hour hit. And that to me was mind blowing, because that to me is the true freedom from alcohol, where it doesn't take up so much mental space. It was
Yeah.
taking up so much of my mental space. And the benefits that I saw within the first 30 days were just so, as a mom, made me feel like I had a superpower. I was sleeping better. I was no longer waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to fall back asleep. That mommy brain fog went away. And I thought, Molly, I was going to have that for the rest of my life. I thought that was something that I had because I had 3 kids, that I now was just going to go, like a zombie through life. All of a sudden I had this mental clarity. I had energy. I had more patience with my kids. And, at 101, my husband says, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to keep going. I mean, this is so amazing. This is really what they say alcohol promises you in parenthood. This is what is actually true. The sobriety is what makes you a better parent." Right? It's not the alcohol that they're trying to sell you to say this is what it means to be a parent and to get through parenting. I now feel like I have a superpower, and I wanted to go out and share that with the world.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Hey there, it's Molly taking a quick break to talk with you about Sunnyside. You all know that Sunnyside is my app of choice and my recommendation for a tool to help you create sustainable change around your drinking. One of the things that I love about Sunnyside is their commitment to improving the user experience, and that has been a constant since I started working with them nearly 3 years ago now. Since June this year, they have added the Android version of their iOS app. So now it's available for Apple users and all Android users. It's the same Sunnyside experience across all of those devices. And it's just another example of their commitment to improving the user experience. Another example would be the fact that now you can set it up for push notifications. So you can take all of the daily texts, the reminders, and put them into a push preference so that you determine how you want to receive the support from Sunnyside. I would love for you to check it out. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started with a 15-day free trial today. A lot of people get sober, Maggie, and they don't decide to go start a collective or run a summit. They they
That's
don't
too funny.
they they don't go all in here. So let's talk about that decision. And I'm smiling because, whether sober or not, I same as me, I've written a book, I've had a podcast for 3.5 years. I coach people, I work with, not everybody does that. But for me, my mother actually passed away as the result of an alcoholic binge at the age of 81, which is almost
My goodness.
un
So
yeah, I know,
sorry.
right? Her story is amazing because most people don't live to see that. She went through recovery 4 different times. The last of which was at the age of 77, which again is almost unheard of. And that was a 9-month residential program. And she drank 3 weeks after. And the thing of it is that what I realized about that is obviously by the time it was 9 months, it wasn't that she was no longer physically dependent on alcohol by then. She was very much psychologically dependent on it, right? And so that's where my journey really emphasizes, because I want people to understand, just like you said, it's the thought work, it's the things that we think about alcohol, it's how those things drive our desire to drink that we need to impact. And while the alcohol itself is definitely needs to be paid attention to, we have to learn how to manage our brains. And that's what I talk about all the time. It's about becoming a better thinker and understanding how I was driving my own desire to drink and not just writing it off to a genetic predisposition, which is what I did for many years, understanding how I actually fueled my own habit and how I could unfuel that habit by changing how I thought about alcohol. And so that is really, key to what I think both of us are doing. And I believe that, like I said, whether it's becoming 100% sober, and I love the fact that I tell people all the time, you have to remain open to that idea. I still remain open to that idea. Will there ever come a time when I decide that I want to be 100% alcohol free? It may happen, and that's okay with me. And I'm really at peace and have freedom, like you said, with where I am right now, because I don't think about alcohol all the time. I don't worry about it. I don't over desire it. I don't. And I just want people to know that there is the possibility, there is that you can get there, and you can get there in more ways than one. And so that's what I think is so important. So let's talk about what you decided to do. So you decide you're going to help people, you decide you have the superpower, and you decide that you are going to first and foremost create a summit.
Yeah, well, yes, but that wasn't the plan. The plan
Okay.
wasn't for me to go all in and do all this. No, it's funny. I was only 6 months into my journey, and I don't know if you've felt this in your journey, but when you remove alcohol, oftentimes you pick up sugar as another kind of coping mechanism. And I did that, and I was giving myself grace in doing that, saying, well, it's okay, eat the chocolate because you're not drinking the wine. And I
Right.
was okay with that. But I did find myself craving the chocolate a bit more. And so I was attending actually two different summits that revolved around quitting sugar. And
Okay.
they're pretty popular. And I thought, gosh, if there's two of them, right, that I'm attending, there's got to be one on alcohol. Where's that? Because I was still pretty early in
Right,
my
right,
journey,
right.
right? 6 months in. And so I went to go find it and I couldn't find one. I thought, oh gosh, well, this is a missed opportunity because I would really love to attend a summit that has all these amazing speakers and resources and,
Yeah.
the motivation. And so I went to a few podcasters thinking, well, podcasters are the great people, right? They would be the perfect people to interview these
Right.
guests. And because they're used to doing it. And so I pitched the idea to a few podcasters and I got a very polite no, we don't know what a summit is and we're too busy, but we'll be on it if you go ahead and do it. We'll support you. I thought, well, that's great, but I'm at 6 months and I one had not even gone out and told, like my social
Right.
media or like that I was alcohol free. And two, I wasn't an author, podcaster, or anything in the space. Nobody knew who I was, which did kind of it well it, in the sense that when I reached out to people, it was like, wait, who are you? Wait,
Yeah,
what is
right.
this? This is a brand new event. We don't know who Maggie Klaassens is. But once I started getting a few speakers to say yes, I mean, the ball really started rolling, and I thought, oh no, like now I have to do this. Like, who am I? I really had some struggles with that of like, who am I to do this? Can I actually do this? And when we talk about the work, the work is putting yourself in, that uncomfortable feeling of doing something that you don't think is possible. But
Yeah.
to me, in sobriety, I actually go do it. When I was drinking, it was like, oh, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do this one day. And
Yeah.
I never actually did it. I never explored it. I never gave myself the time, the energy to do those things. And I thought, well, maybe this is the thing I do in sobriety, right? People are
Yeah.
out there writing books, running marathons or, quitting their job and going for their dream job. Maybe this is, kind of my Mount Everest, if you will. So I started doing it and I thought, oh gosh, it's going to be my mom and my husband attending this thing. We had over 5,000 people attend the first
It's
one.
amazing.
It was incredible. And I still get emails today from people who attended that one saying, hey, I just want to let you know I'm X number of days sober.
Hmm.
And it was because I joined your summit. And that feels incredible. So if I can
Yeah.
help anyone just to start getting curious. So whether you are sober curious or you're already sober, it doesn't matter. I think there's room for all of us, to be honest. And we're all here to support each other and to be there for each other because everybody's journey is so different. And so, it's sad to hear that people are like, well, if you're not one or the other, you can't be. No, we don't need that in our lives. We need people who are there to support us, inspire us, motivate us, and help us because this is hard. This is hard work.
Yeah.
And if you've been drinking for decades, it does not happen overnight that you just all of a sudden don't drink anymore.
Hmm.
You're rewiring a lot in your brain, a lot of habits, a lot of, to your point, stories you tell yourself about alcohol. It's for me, it was a coping mechanism. So just, as you mentioned, my highs, I drank, my lows, I drank. It was my thing I went to, whether I was happy or sad, it was the thing I went to. And having to relearn, um, you know, different ways to cope with my emotions.
Mhm.
That was a struggle in my first year. That was
Yeah.
hard. And being able to interview all these amazing people, I mean, even to this day, we're doing our third sober summit this week. And even to this day, being able to interview all these incredible people, I'm still learning more about myself. It
Yeah.
is a constant personal development journey. And I love that about the sobriety journey. It is never ending. I always want to be in it because it just continues to push me to be a better version of myself every day, every month, every year. And that feels really good.
Yeah. And that's kind of exactly I mean, that's exactly the way that I feel about being an alcohol minimalist. This is not a recovery show, folks. This is not a recovery program. I always say that. This is a personal development life choice. This is a decision to figure out and make, so that alcohol is not the centerpiece of our lives anymore. It is not a go to. It is not what we think about all the time. And when you minimize that, or whether you become completely sober and alcohol free, you've got a lot of time and energy to devote to other areas of your life that really is, and it's exciting. And I say it all, on this podcast, I tell people, like, if I hadn't changed that daily habit that I had that was so ingrained, I guarantee you that I don't write a book. I don't do a podcast. I mean, not only because of the fact that I didn't accomplish it, but I wouldn't have had the time, energy, or anything else to do all of it. You and I both we chatted about this before we got on, but we're both one person shows, and I still work a full time corporate job. People are always amazed by that. Like, how do you do all of it? Well, when you
Superpower.
have right, when you have time and energy, I mean, it's available to me because I have the energy and time. Yes, do I work in odd hours of the day? Yeah, okay. But that's a choice that I make and I enjoy it, right? And it is very gratifying. I agree with you when people tell you that you've had a small part in helping them make changes in their lives. So let's put a cap on this, Maggie. Let's tell people where they can, because it is happening this week, my friends. You have to go today, go get registered, and you can take part and learn from some really incredible people at the Sober Summit. So tell me more.
Yeah, so it's September 25th through 27th. It's an online event. So you can be in your PJs on your couch if you want to, which is just, that's the day and age we live in. And I just love that, right? Maybe someday I'll do an in-person, summit, but
People
today,
always want it, but they say they want it, but yeah, it's
yeah.
so easy. Yeah.
So we have 24 speakers, 8 speakers a day. Everything goes live at the same time. So there aren't set times that you have to be somewhere. At 8 a.m. Eastern, everything goes live for day one. You have 8 different interviews to listen to. Everybody has the same 24 hours to listen to those speakers. And then the next day it'll go live, etc. If you do want extended access to all of the interviews, we do have an offering called the All Access Pass. That also gives you a private podcast to listen to all the interviews on the go. And then the speakers have been so incredibly generous this time around. We have over $800 worth of bonuses for people who buy that pass. So classes and books and workshops. I mean, it just to help you on your sober journey or wherever you're at in your journey. So it's an incredible value. It's an incredible resource, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. So we play bingo throughout. You can win prizes. We have a community, so you can find, like-minded people in the space, chat with some of the speakers, etc. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. We have a digital goodie bag, so you can get discounts off of products and services that we partner with different brands on, and so it's a really good time. I really enjoy it. Again, I get so much out of it personally by doing this. I'm sure you feel the same way when you do your podcast. You're like, oh, I get a lot out of this
Yeah.
myself. But to be able to share it with everybody, it's just incredible, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So
Wonderful. I'll put it in the show notes, folks, but what's the URL, Maggie?
thesobersummit.com. So you can get your free ticket and come join us on the 25th. I'll do a kickoff call on Tuesday, the 24th, to kind of walk through how everything's going to work and how to get the most out of the summit. But yeah, and it'll start on 8 a.m. on the 25th.
literally, everybody, this episode is dropping on Monday the 23rd. So go register today. Get to the www.thesobersummit.com. It is free. There is a free pass if you want to go and just be a part of this summit for the 25th, 26th, and 27th. You can have access to that totally free. And as Maggie said, there's an all access pass that's going to give you a whole bunch of bonuses if you want to do that, and also then allow you to kind of listen in a more extended way. So if it doesn't work for you to be there across those 3 days, this is such a great opportunity, folks. Whether or not you are trying to just minimize alcohol or you want to become completely alcohol free, there are resources in this summit that really apply. That's exactly how I feel about it. The thought work that you do to change how you think about alcohol matters in terms of whether you are becoming alcohol free or you are just simply getting to a point where you are free from a daily drinking habit, free from over drinking, and minimizing alcohol. So, very vital information here that will really be helpful for all of us. Maggie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time, joining me in a quick way. We decided kind of last, I was like, we could do this. We could actually do this and get this information out to my listeners in time for them to join. So I appreciate that.
Oh, I thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to see everyone there. I hope you'll join us.
Awesome. Maggie Klaassens, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 3 ways. You can learn about them over at www.mollywatts.com/workwithme. Or better yet, reach out to me directly. It's molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and discuss what's best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going.